Style Squad, we are diving into CBD today. And no, not my initials, Cassie Burkhardt-Delora, CBD. In the last few years, the cannabis-derived ingredient has attracted fascination, healing powers, and controversy. And get this, according to cannabis researchers, sales in the CBD space are expected to surpass $20 billion by 2024.
That's insane. And from celebrities to us regular people, people are becoming obsessed with an ingredient that most of us actually don't know much about. It has made its way into a plethora of skincare and makeup products, and we have so many questions about what CBD is, what it actually does. Should we put it on our faces, and does it actually work?
And lucky for us, to help us with our bajillion questions that we have board-certified dermatologist and co-host of the hit show The Doctors, Dr. Sonia Batra, joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
We are so happy to have you because we've been talking about this for
so long.
Months, weeks, doing our own personal experiments, but we need the expert. We need the expert opinion.
Well, thank you.
So obviously, you know, in this space, a lot of the fascination for people, I feel like, comes from the fact that we're seeing a lot of celebrities diving into the CBD space. I mean, you have Kourtney Kardashian, Kim Kardashian, Naomi Watts.
had a CBD-themed baby shower.
Like, it is something that especially we're seeing on social media a lot, so
Yes.
people are curious. And I personally, just for the record, have never, you know, dove into CBD. So we have a lot of genuine questions for you, beginning with what is CBD?
Sure. Well, let's start at the
question.
beginning. So CBD stands for cannabidiol, and what it is it's derived from cannabis. So that's where the hype you're seeing is, because as we're seeing legislation change around the country, with many states adopting both legalization recreationally and certainly more for medicinal use, we're seeing a big uptick in interest. And so the reason CBD has hit the forefront in the beauty space is because over the past 20 years, there's been a tremendous amount of research on a system in the body, not from plants, called the endocannabinoid system. And what that is it's a network of signaling and receptors that actually maintain balance in your body. So it's meant to modulate pain, inflammation, certainly immunity, stress, and for the skin, most relevantly, is the inflammation I mentioned, but also it regulates your production of lipids or oil in the skin. So based on preliminary data, what we're seeing is that CBD, which is derived from cannabis plants, both hemp as well as marijuana, can actually interact with your body's own endocannabinoid receptors. So you have CBD receptors in your skin, and that's where all this interest is coming from, because you can use these plant-derived materials to interact with your skin's own receptors for CBD, and thereby modulate inflammation, help with acne. There's some really interesting preliminary data about treating inflammatory conditions in the skin like eczema and psoriasis with CBD products. So that's where all this interest is coming from. Yeah, so you have all the interest in cannabis in general, both for medicinal and other uses, but now you have something that's known to interact with your skin in CBD. So that's kind of the nutshell as to what it is and why it's relevant to the skin.
That's wild. I'm wondering now, you mentioned psoriasis. Isn't that what Kim Kardashian has that she suffers from? I wonder if that feeds into why she's interested. I wonder if she's tried it at all to treat that.
Yeah, that I don't know if she's actually tried a CBD
We don't know.
product.
Tell us if you have.
Are there any risks to using it?
So not that we know of at present specific to CBD, but where the risks may arise is how it's formulated. So with any cosmetic product, there are often going to be other things added to it. In the case of things that might be irritating or toxic, we always talk about avoiding fragrance, we always talk about avoiding preservatives, because we know that in skincare products, especially for people with sensitive skin, the additives like that are what will often trigger a reaction. Now, interestingly, because all of this research around CBD is so new, we actually don't know at this point what's the optimal dosing from a skin perspective. We know that those receptors are there. We knew that they play a role in inflammation and redness and acne in the skin, but we don't necessarily know in the over-the-counter products for sure how much is necessary, how much is too much. and what aspect the CBD alone is really going to have is separate from the preservatives and the fragrances that might irritate your skin.
I think one of the biggest questions that I encountered in doing my research and even hearing about it is, because it's derived from marijuana, are you going to feel anything? You know, are you going to feel high?
You're not
Are
the
you
only
going
one
to
who had
feel
that
like
question.
You're on drugs. Like that's been the biggest question as I've been kind of jumping down this rabbit hole.
Yeah, and I think that's the most relevant question, because people just think automatically, oh, it's derived from cannabis, that's pot, that's going to make me high. But the interesting thing is there's separate, over 100 cannabinoid compounds in plants in the cannabis family. And so the two kind of big broad separators are hemp, which actually contains less than 0.3% THC. So THC is the part that alters your mood, alters your thinking, makes you high. And so interestingly, the beauty products are going to be in this hemp-derived space, because the FDA won't allow these over-the-counter products to have more than 0.3% THC in them. So I always tell people who ask me, and certainly my patients, interestingly, while we know that CBD has those anti-inflammatory, anti-redness benefits, it will not make you high. So I want to repeat that. CBD does not make you high.
There we go.
It's the THC component. And so when we talk about plants from the cannabis family, the hemp is going to have less than 0.3% THC. Of course, marijuana is going to have anywhere from 5 to 35% THC, and that's the big difference, because when you buy a product, certainly any FDA product is going to be pre-market. It's not going to go through a direct approval process. It has to be less than 0.3% THC, or it's not going to be on that beauty shelf. Anything derived from marijuana that may be 5 to 35% THC is going to have to go through a dispensary. So I would say to any of you or any of your viewers watching that if you're buying it from a regular like drugstore, department store, and it's a CBD brand, it should not contain more than 0.3% THC. It will not make you high. So it's important to know.
There we go.
But when you buy it from a dispensary, because it has a higher percentage in it, does it just have stronger effects then?
So it could. So the difference is most of the places, if you're going to a dispensary, it's going to be regulated by the government. So you should have some label, or the bud tender at your dispensary should be able to tell you what percentage CBD or THC it is, so you know what you're modulating. Now it's really interesting when we talk about the CBD and the products that have CBD in them, we always talk about whether they're whole plant or full spectrum kind of from the plant, which means that yeah, exactly. And so a well-formulated product is going to tell you whether it has the whole plant, and if so, it might have a little bit more THC in it, versus something that's CBD isolate, which has nothing else and just the CBD. And the reason it's relevant to your question about dispensaries is there is some thought about something called an entourage effect, which is that when you have more of those 100 cannabinoids, which includes the THC, you may get better results than just the CBD alone. So that's where it's relevant.
So if you're suffering, for example, from like really severe acne, something's not working, would you recommend then to your patient to use something from a dispensary versus a, you know, just over-the-counter drugstore, because it does have a higher percentage?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
So with active,
so many questions.
No, that's a great question. But interestingly, with active ingredients for the skin, and this is from a lot of data on other products, like similarly like alpha hydroxy acids or retinoids, more is not always better, because as you ramp up on the concentration and the percentage, sometimes the potential for irritation of your skin is going to be a lot more. So while we actually, to your earlier question, don't know the therapeutic dose right now for CBD, I always tell people start low. The likelihood, fortunately, of ever overdosing on a CBD receptor is almost nothing, but you don't know if as you ramp up that concentration, you're going to irritate the skin more. There may be some kind of unexpected side effect that we wouldn't necessarily have anticipated, and we do see that with other actives in the skin. So anytime you're using something therapeutic on your skin, and retinoids are a great one, those are the vitamin A's in retin A and in retinols that are really also in vogue for skincare. We know that as we ramp up on that concentration, inflammation, it's going to make you more dry, it's going to make you more red, it's going to make you more irritated. So anytime you're putting a new active ingredient on your skin, probably best to start low. And you can always ramp up. And this is a really good analogy, because you can always start over the counter, make sure it helps your skin, that you're tolerant to it, that it doesn't irritate you. And you can always go higher. But if you blast your skin and you're red and you're peeling, you're not really going to know if it's just that it was too strong, or you're truly allergic to it, or what went wrong.
Doctor, my question for you is when using CBD products, is consistency key?
Right, because a lot of the things I was trying, because I've tried a lot of products, I've only tried them like once or twice. So I can't give anything a fair shake yet.
Yeah, and I think that's reasonable, but it's nice to know that even after that one time, you did feel like it benefited you. And to your point, with anything inflammatory, consistency is key, because we do think, especially with respect to inflammatory conditions in the skin, there is sort of a cycle where as things are inflamed, that upregulation of certain chemicals in your skin and in your blood, it continues to feed upon itself. So you don't want to just interrupt that cycle once, you want to keep interrupting it so that it eventually tamps down and you get some sustained relief. So to your point, if you do have an inflammatory condition and this is helpful to you, the more consistent you are about maintaining it, then overall the disease should quiet more. So that's true.
I would imagine, would you say that's the same for any new ingredient? Because there's always the new ingredient. The reason we're talking about CBD right now is because it's like the next
hot
big thing.
Yeah.
But when something comes along like this, how long do you wait for it, I guess, to percolate in the skincare and beauty industry before you would start recommending it? Or, when does it become more normal? When does it become something you'd recommend?
Well, I think the data has to catch up. So the interesting thing about CBD is that we are now starting to see some of the data catch up, especially with respect to the inflammatory conditions. But to your point, it feels like every year there's a hot new ingredient.
Right.
As a dermatologist, I'm always trying to read and keep up. And a lot of times, and even in the CBD realm, there's a lot of hype before the data and the research actually catches up. So it's just kind of a trendy new ingredient that everybody's throwing in because there's this buzz around it. But you always have to wait to see, is that basic science actually there? So to your point, I think you should probably wait a good 6 months to a year at least and see where the long-term data comes in, if it's actually going to give you a benefit or if it's just something that is short-term gain for very long-term pain. And we also see that where sometimes some things look really good on that Instagram picture, but then you find out that someone has a horrible reaction a couple months later or a couple weeks later, and that's terrible. So I think that's what it is. And then I also tell anybody, my patients and anybody who asks me, always patch test something new. So you never ever want to get that hot new product and you're so excited to use it that you slather it over your whole face. Because if it doesn't agree with you, you're going to have a red, horrible rash everywhere. So a good idea, a good rule of thumb with any new product that you're going to be applying to a larger surface area is patch test it on your inner arm or on your jawline. Do it for about 5 nights. Make sure you're not red, you're not itchy, you're not getting blisters. If you're doing great with it, okay, go ahead and apply it to a larger area.
I try so many things recklessly. I need to stop doing that.
Yeah, and in fact, if you go to say a department store and they give you those little satchels, what I tell people is great. You have enough to patch test it. Just that's enough just to see, make sure it doesn't disagree with you. You're not necessarily going to get some great therapeutic result with just that little satchel, but it'll tell you if it agrees with you and if it's something you can use a little bit more long term with benefit.
With all of that being said, what are you finding are when new patients come in and they do have questions or concerns regarding CBD, what is like the biggest out of all of it? Like for me, it would be the how is it regulated? All of that, that would be my first thought.
Regulation is such a confusing thing,
right?
Because there's stuff at dispensaries, but then now like Sephora has things. So how is it regulated?
So and so that's a perfect question. I think to your question, the number one thing people ask me is it going to make me high? Which you asked, and that's to say no, CBD is separate from THC. It won't make you high, and that's relevant to how it's regulated because we know that in 2018 the FDA actually started looking at medicines that have only CBD versus some component of THC, and they moved anything with less than 0.1% THC out of what we call Schedule 1 or the controlled territory. But it's interesting vis-a-vis the beauty products because they're over-the-counter cosmetics, meaning that when they have that designation that they're going to improve your appearance, they're not considered drugs. I want everybody to know they're not regulated the same way by the FDA. They don't go through a drug approval process. By definition, a drug is meant to alter the function of your body, the function or structure structure. When you talk about a cosmetic, it's meant to improve your appearance, it's a cleanser, it's something that isn't going to undergo what we call pre-market approval. So it can hit the shelf, it's going to be allowed, and until someone complains that they have a problem with it, or it's adulterated, or they make a false claim that it in some way is medicinal and then goes into that drug category, the FDA is not even going to touch it. The only time they're concerned about it is if it does have 0.3% THC or more. So interestingly, all those products on the shelf at Sephora or at Ulta, or wherever you're seeing it, CVS, those are going to be hemp derived in the beauty space because that's federally legal. It's less than 0.3% THC under the Farm Bill of 2018. Those can all be on the market and on the shelves, and they don't undergo any sort of strict FDA scrutiny before they're actually in the market.
Are they regulated, though, the same way other products on the shelf
other
are?
cosmetics?
Yes.
Just the same way. Okay,
Yeah,
but
but remember,
not anything
pertaining
special.
to the CBD.
Yeah, and this is actually something
Okay.
we cover on the doctors a lot because there's this perception that if it's on the shelf, it
That
has
it's
to be
okay.
safe.
Right, wow.
And
I agree.
Yeah.
I would think if it's there, someone must have looked at it and it must be okay.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
But with this type of category, so we're talking about supplements, we're talking about cosmetics, interestingly, the way they regulate it is when people complain, they'll certainly investigate it, but it has to be some complaint about harm or adulteration, or like I said, if it's more than 0.3% THC, they won't allow it. If they try to make claims that put it in that drug category in terms of altering the structure or function of the body.
I have a question.
Same.
I have a question. Okay. So I've seen now so many beauty brands just throw CBD into any product. So I can wrap my mind around like an oil or a lotion or something like that. But like, what on earth is CBD doing in mascara, for example? Like, is there any potential benefit to putting it in cosmetics?
So I think there is some potential benefit, but oftentimes it's not what you're thinking in terms of the benefit of the CBD from an anti-inflammatory or from an acne standpoint. So remember, CBD oil in and of itself is really moisturizing and emolliating. So if you see it in a lipstick or a lip balm, it's going to be emolliating. So that's one option kind of there, that you might not necessarily see it as an anti-inflammatory, but you're seeing it as a hydrating agent. When you talk about it in, say, brow gel or mascara, interestingly, CBD is also an alternative. It's sort of a binder, and so as an alternative to beeswax, this is a vegan option to act as a binding agent. So now you're also seeing it more for consistency. Yeah, you're seeing it more for consistency rather than for some proposed therapeutic benefit of the CBD. But I agree with you. When I walk down the shelves and I see how many things have CBD right now, I think a lot of that is just hype and trying to throw in, you know, just join that bandwagon. There's actually a term for it in the CBD world, which is called weed washing, which is because so many things, because things have this kind of right now buzz around anything cannabis derived.
What exactly is the difference between hemp and CBD? Because I remember like in the 90s, like, hemp came around as a new ingredient, and so why now CBD? What's the difference exactly?
So hemp and marijuana are both derived from cannabis plants.
Okay.
And so they're kind of strains. And so the definition of hemp, a plant being put into that category, is it has to have less than 0.3% THC. And so the marijuana strains will have 5 to 35% THC, but they're all in that cannabis family, which is why it's so confusing. Because when you read about it, it's hard to know, but it's that content, whether it can make you high or not, which changes the classification. Because hemp has been used as a textile for many, many years, and that's because it is a very good plant-based textile. But in this case, when we're talking about the medicinal aspect of CBD, you can actually get it from either one. It's just the other things in it, whether it has THC or not.
So I could be totally wrong with this. I'm trying to wrap my head around it. So hemp is a lower percentage of THC then?
Correct. So
she understands.
So yes, so by definition, for it to be considered the hemp strain of cannabis, it has to be less than 0.3% THC.
Okay.
Exactly.
Got the answer. Wow.
No, but I'm so glad you're asking these questions because it's really confusing, and that's why when you're in this sort of cannabis buzzword kind of world, it's sometimes hard to know exactly what you're getting, and that's why people are confused.
This whole thing is so interesting because, I started seeing different celebrities posting about it and commenting about it, and the use cases are all over the place. Like, I've seen people using oils on their feet if they're having they're wearing high heels for a really long period of time, and they anticipate that their feet will get really sore, they use it like that, or on their skin, or on beauty products. So I mean, there are so many different ways that we're seeing this. So thank you for helping us dispel all these rumors and putting us in our place and figuring out exactly what we should be looking for and how we should be shopping for it. Because I don't foresee this going away anytime soon. I feel like we're kind of in the Wild West right now. It's kind of like prohibition. You know, anything marijuana or cannabis derived is, like you said, it's very hot and very of interest. So, you guys, we got the details.
We got the details, and I do
have
have one more question
Sure.
before we wrap. Are there any side effects of CBD use?
So we don't know specifically side effects of the CBD itself topically when you're just applying it in a cream, but we do know that sometimes the other things added to the products can irritate or harm the skin. So you always want to look for something that's not formulated to be too heavy, like something that's going to clog your pores or break you out. You want to avoid fragrances and preservatives that can certainly worsen redness or increase irritation. But specific to CBD, just that one component, we don't know of anything, but you can always be allergic to anything. So I tell my
you
patients,
have to really, I feel like, treat it as if it's just a normal skincare product, like you would do with anything in your drawers or whatnot.
Unless
you always test it. Unless you're Marissa and just throws it on your entire face.
But the one thing I should say is just that one misperception out there that I'm seeing a lot in CBD beauty is that people will advertise hemp seed oil as if it contains CBD.
Yes,
and
I
for
have
your
seen
viewers, it does not. So remember, the actual CBD is in the leaves, the stalk, the flowers of the plant. It is not in the seed. So if you're buying hemp seed oil, which has great omega-3s, omega-6s, it has some hydrating properties, just remember it doesn't have CBD. So it's not going to give you that anti-inflammatory or anti-acne property.
Don't let the beauty companies lie to you, people.
That's why we brought the Dr. Sonia Batra here to join us to, talk all things CBD and educate you guys.
Did it.
We hope you enjoy. We've been working on this for a very long time to dive into the world of CBD. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We so appreciate it.
Thank you so much for
all
having
the
me.
info. We definitely needed it.